Hello, and thanks for joining us. My name's Ian Stroud.
And my name is David Malone, and this is Hyperland.
So, David.
Yes, we got a good one for you today, Ian.
I've heard.
I'm all excited about this one.
I know. You described him as a troublemaker.
John, yeah. So, on today's show, we've got a man called John Ward, otherwise known to a lot of people as the Slog. The Slog was one of those places where, during the whole of the financial crisis, John wrote trenchant pieces questioning the narrative.
Yeah.
So he, alongside me, me on the Golem blog, him on the Slog, and we sort of got to know each other and have stayed in contact over the years. And although I ran out of energy, John is indefatigable and has carried on being a thorn inside of most official narratives.
Yeah, you both sound like a thorn on two sides.
He's a much more sturdy thorn than me. Anyway, John, it's lovely to have you on. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
Where are you these days, John? Because you're a peripatetic. You're a peripatetic thorn in the side, aren't you?
This is getting complicated. Yeah. I think probably I'm here in the Gambia because it's the tiniest country in Africa, bar none. But also, they seem to have solved a lot of their social and religious and tribal fighting problems, which they've never had here, but Africa's been full of it. And also, because it's such a tiny place, you can, without having to bankrupt yourself, give something back, and get something out of it that. Like it's easy to just drill a couple of boreholes. Everybody thinks that sounds like a big operation, but it's not. It costs about £250. So if you either get that from your readership or you get a nice bonus from somewhere, fine, I stick it in. It doesn't really make any difference, except to the people in that village. Because the people in that village can then know that they're only bound to be free of malaria.
Yeah.
And also they can sell their produce as malaria-free because it's been watered by clean, sweet water, as opposed to infected water. So, but mainly it's just it's a tiny place, but it's a pretty happening place. And there's a lot of good music here, great music, a lot of live bands.
Excellent.
And by the way, a lot of incredibly beautiful women. Anyway.
Well, there you go.
I wasn't expecting that.
So, when did you start the Slog? Because I started the Golem blog back in 2008. Well, no, a little after 2008.
I was forced to restart it. I was then called Not Born Yesterday. And then I proved that the entire opposite, that I had been born yesterday, because I thought I could write a story saying that Gordon Brown, with his finger in the nuclear button, was suffering from acute, very, very, very severe depression. And that didn't go down well, especially in Downing Street. So I got aced out of that, and what happened then was that the Guardian gave that story to the New York Times, and said how one blogger's wild guess nearly unseated the Prime Minister, but it turned out not to have been a wild guess, and so after that I started the Slog because. The former editor of The Week, I'm not even sure he's still with us, but anyway, he was then, and he said, what you do is you are a bollocks deconstructor. And I thought, well, that's not exactly but anyway, Slog was short for, bollocks deconstructor. I just took the slog out of it and thought, that's not going to offend anybody, but it is going to make them realize that I'm still on the case. And so that's how I got. And then I went to France, and then the same things happened there. I got censored a lot. I was amazed by that, really, because there was a lot of rumor around at the time that Macron's wife was not a woman; she was a man, and I had met her, so I thought, I'm sorry, but she has no Adam's apple, and she's pretty cool looking bird. So I'm damn sure it is not. But despite that, I couldn't get anywhere with that one. So eventually, then I came here, and one of the great things about this country is that you really can say what you think, and no one's going to get offended.
Yeah.
They call it the smiley coast, but so long as you've got a smile on your face, and
When you say
someone's just taking the mickey out of you, white boy, white boy with a guitar with a sound about, and then suddenly you get you give them something back, that.
Well, that's great.
And it was terrific. And so I thought, this is the place for me. I came here for 2 weeks, and I never went back. That's 3 years ago. So I'm still here now, making a nuisance of myself as usual.
Well, that's good. I thought we could chat a bit about our present political moment, because it's something that you've been talking about, but also sort of through the lens of when we were writing during the financial crisis, because I don't know how you felt, but one of the things that happened during that time with me is I would go around, and I did quite a lot of public lectures, and I would talk about the English Revolution and how I thought it was unfinished business. And what I noticed is there was a moment, probably 2010, maybe somewhere around there, where people in the audience who were wearing tweed jackets and corduroy trousers, and were probably in their 50s and had arrived in a nice car, they started talking about revolution. They would use the R word. Now, it's one thing if some teenager with a beret jammed down on his head and a Che Guevara t-shirt says, yes, the revolution. but this was the Twin Set and Pearls Brigade. And it just seemed like there was a moment when whether people were just so incensed, or whatever the right word is, but where I thought there was a moment where there was the energy to clear out the great, massive, dead wood of our present political system. Did you feel the same, or was I just...
No, I think I felt exactly the same, actually. I think that by and large, I knew more and more people who, I was very conscious of the fact that I had a lot of so-called liberal friends, and they were to a man and a woman also, we mustn't leave the European Union. And I said, have you ever lived in the European Union? Do you know how it works? And so I started on that for a bit of a while. We left, although, and then of course we've had, ever since then, another 8 years of trying desperately to overwhelm what was the result of the, which was billed from the start as a once only plebiscite. And of course, the left didn't like that. So because they lost, they've been going on about it ever since.
Well, we ran it twice. Well, so that's the thing. We had two of them. We then had the election afterwards, which was, I actually ran in that election. So I was on the doorstep, and it was very clearly a rerun. It was all fought on the Brexit question, and they got the same result.
Yeah, I know. It's like that, the man said that Einstein said that one of the sure signs that you're insane is that you keep on doing the same experiment over and over again, expecting a different result.
Yeah.
I think what happened at that time was that the Remainers, or Ramonas, as I usually pretty well often call them, I think they were working in a different zone to the rest of us. I think they were in the subatomic zone, where, of course, actually you can do the same experiment 16 times and get 15 different answers. But that's another issue entirely. What I think has happened now since is, and what I'd been fearing really ever since the Tory Liberal alliance that was there for a while diddled. Well, actually, if they'd been in private insurance, they would have gone to jail. But they withdrew a civil right for 50s born women to have their pensions.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
this
the WASPy women.
really got me very, very, very angry indeed. It obviously didn't affect me. But that's not the point, is it? The point is, you just take one of the civil rights officers, and one day my daughters will be in that age group. What are they going to do?
Yeah.
And then I think it just got more and more and more madly neoliberal, and
Yes.
and then I felt that we were moving into another stage, which is kind of like neoliberal economic policy fails. Therefore, we have to have a neocon diplomatic policy to keep on winding everybody up and to draw attention away from the fact that we, if in the case of the US, we now owe $32 trillion thanks to Sleepy Joe. So this kind of those kinds of things just made me more and more nervous. And I would say probably that after around about 2018 and 19, and then going into the beginnings of COVID, and finding the amazing cross-section of people who were saying, I just don't like the feel of this. It stinks. It's not right. There are things wrong with this. They say they're following the science, they're clearly not. They're just going around in circles. And then the unexpected deaths began to start. And then I began to look at, other things that are going around. I think if I may say so, I think my overview of this is that there's a tiny minority of folks who are pretty twisted human beings, and they want a world without what Henry Kissinger so kindly called, what would you say they were at the end? He said that we were all useless eaters.
Yes.
And it was a great compliment to receive on your 76th year. But anyway, so I then I thought, no, this is just it just isn't right. And so, and if you look at it in that overview sense, I think what they have tried to do is as part and parcel of their trying to destroy the nature of a nation state. I think what they're doing is they're trying to replace those nation states with something else that's not a nation, but is still a sovereign, be it the banking system, the bourse system, many, many, many others. Provide that, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, and whatnot. So these people have taken on so much power that we are no longer living in a free speech democracy. I mean, thanks to the influence of the big six investment houses on the bourse now, they just have the legacy media completely tied in knots and tied down and don't answer back, just print what we say.
I'll tell you one of the things that interests me, what you just said, in fact, is this business of trying to replace the nation state. And I think it's really interesting that we're in the situation where there's a steady erosion of what the Americans would call the First Amendment, your right to think,
that's right,
your right to speak. And at the same time, a massive inflation of the 14th Amendment. And the 14th Amendment was famously brought in to protect the newly emancipated slaves in America. But no case has ever, I don't think a case has ever been brought or on that basis, on Afro-American rights, but it has been completely taken over. The 14th Amendment now is the amendment which protects the rights of corporations as if they were people.
Exactly. That's exactly on the same page as where I am. They've tried to turn something which is a systemic institution into something that might have called in another era the president or the prime minister or the queen. Don't you know what I'm saying? And therefore, that's being, and I believe it's being done totally consciously. And I believe, unfortunately, the vast majority of the electorates in the West are asleep because they're brainwashed into thinking you can't possibly accuse us of being a form of not entirely correct way of thinking about things, because that's what the Russians and the Chinese do.
No,
We
yes,
don't do
exactly. Yeah.
we don't do that. And yet you see evidence every single day that that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
Um,
It's also interesting you're raising Kissinger as these useless eaters, because
yeah,
you've got Kissinger, who I think we'd all agree you would sit him on the right hand, the right wing of American politics. You know, he was
Yes.
one of Rockefeller's boys to Council for Foreign Relations.
Correct.
But then you've also got Hillary Clinton, her calling the same people the deplorables. So from my view, you have an attack on ordinary people from both the right
sides.
and the left. Or
That's right.
I hate calling it the left, because when I look at the current left under Corporal Starmer, I don't see a left. I see progressives, and I don't see progressives and progressivism as anything to do with the left.
No, I think it's. Well, you can also take it. There isn't really. There isn't much of a left. In fact, you might say it. Or
I would agree with that.
And very few of the right are right. I mean, that's the trouble. I mean, there's no way of. Unfortunately, what they're trying to do is kill every single known cliche, but at the same time try and make it look like it's all right, really. I mean, I look at it in terms, say, of things as like, I was fiddling with a piece last week. I haven't put it up yet because it still needs work. But I wrote a minute percentage of twisted humanity engaged in artificial intelligence, secret state intelligence, and the military have decided that the greater mass of human sapiens, Homo sapiens, is obsolete. Now, that's the problem we've created for ourselves, because they've been the main catalyst in it. And then you just said, let's face it, vets would be best because they don't breathe, need to be paid, need to eat, menstruate, need pensions or answer back. I mean, and it does add up. You can't help but feel everything that's been done, since coded, everything that's been done to turn the the so-called inquiry, and that was just a joke. I mean, they didn't go anywhere near.
The COVID inquiry, that was pathetic.
Absolutely pathetic. I mean, it was like, it reminded me a bit of the, after Kennedy was shot, and the bullets that went flying in 3 different directions, and
the magic bullet.
Bits of somebody's head that went flying in the wrong direction, and so the FBI colored it in on the Zapruder tape just to make sure nobody would get the wrong idea, But it was a horrible realization. But I think these people have just gained in confidence over a long period of time, and I don't think it's been helped by not so much a politicization of education, but awarding points for agreeing with the general view of what history says is, to me, a complete cancer. Because, I remember when I was at uni, right, I got a first by writing stuff that wasn't Marxist and wasn't, fascist or Mussolini-esque or whatever. I wrote something by saying, this particular bit here doesn't work, does it? Everybody says it works, but it doesn't. But no matter what we do, the same people still wind up at the bottom. Now, what are the reasons for that? And is it this, is it that, is it the other? You wouldn't, you would be marked wrong today.
Yeah.
For saying that. You would be marked just wrong. You don't get a degree, piss off. And that would be...
Well, would you be marked as wrong, or would they just claim that you were peddling disinformation?
They'd probably have a go at everything. I mean, I once went to a place where, just before I left France, I came back to England for a few days and went to a meeting, and there's some very funny moments in it, but basically it was somebody saying, something at a meeting and saying, we mustn't think that, the Russians aren't still engaging in, you know, misinformation and disinformation. So to put my hand up, said, what is the difference between misinformation and disinformation? And there was a long, convoluted answer, and the answer came to be, so how many people do we know? I asked, how many people do we know who were actually there? Because if you don't know and you weren't there, then it's meaningless.
Yeah.
We've reached the stage now where, when I was younger, if you wanted to do some research on a piece of investigative journalism, it took you ages to dig it all out. Now, what you find is you can do that same amount of work in about 10 minutes, but you're then left with 58 alternatives as to what the real truth is. So it's still a nightmare.
Where is that research coming from?
I mean, that's what you do now. I mean, it used to be that you had to erase the truth and suppress the truth, but now you just cover it with a great avalanche of contradictory and confusing alternatives.
Yes.
So that you know, if you're trying, rather than have to buy a safe to put your diamond in, you just throw it onto the beach, and then good luck seeing it amongst all of the sand. I mean, and this business of follow the science. We don't follow the science. We bury the science.
That's exactly right. We're not. Well, I wouldn't mind, but following it was the last thing they were doing. I mean, if they looked at the treatment of other fairly unpleasant viruses over time, the last thing you'd have done is lock us all down. Yeah, and that wasn't even just following the science; it was denying the science. I mean, and in the middle of that, you've got, of course, Anthony Fauci, or it's a great name. I mean, Faustus, it just comes straight out of him as soon as you see him. But he's. I mean, he tells me, well, we had to have a gain of function. Okay, what was the gain and what was the function? And you don't get an answer to that one. And also, by the way, why were you in Wuhan?
Well, I mean, yes.
And it was a bat, actually. It wasn't me. It was my pet bat. And I can't find him, but I'm sure there'll be an answer somewhere.
Well,
and it's just BS.
The whole COVID story was a horrible fiction from beginning to end, and so unscientific. So, but we made that film, and were called racists by The Guardian immediately.
Yeah. You should wear that as a medal of honor, as far as I'm concerned, because the Guardian is absolutely convinced that everybody is a racist, except them, of course.
Yeah.
And in actual fact, I've been extremely polite too, and also I'm increasingly admiring of those guys who were at The Guardian and left because it was clearly turning into a madhouse.
Yes,
so we're now producing some very good journalists coming out and saying, this is actually what really happened. So in the end, I think after that, after we got into that area, and then these, questions were not getting answered at all. Like, for instance, lots of people saying over and over again, the Daily Telegraph, or the Daily Belly Laugh, as I call it. I mean, it's a bit of a joke, really, because while there are some very, very, very good journalists, particularly the women journalists there, who are doing a great job, they're clearly being hassled and harassed every which way but loose, to try and get them to, change their tack. And I read an article there, I can't remember now who it was, but its basic premise was, it's no good all jumping up and down and saying that, my goodness me, isn't Rishi Sunak an idiot? I mean, what on earth is he playing at? This guy is almost just as nuts south of being an absolutely, hugely intelligent and genius level human being. He knows exactly what he needs to do to make this election worth having in the first place. And he's not doing it. He's doing the diametric opposite. And he doesn't seem very worried about it.
Why do you think that
Really-
is then, John?
Sorry?
Why do you think that is then, John?
Because he's not working for us. He's working for something outside of us.
Yeah.
And I don't see how anybody can reach another conclusion. I do know one telegraph hack who is furious about it, but he's being kept in his hole and told not to stray out from. But he's incandescent with rage about it.
That's not Ridley, is it?
No, it isn't. Funny enough, and I can't really say because it was
No,
off
that's
the
fine.
record.
Yeah.
But the terrible thing about this, is I often say to people, if I haven't laughed for 20 minutes, then chances are I'm dead. Because it's so amazingly hysterically funny at the same time as you're watching this and you're thinking, oh, I see. So what you're saying is that because women may wear miniskirts, that's what causes earthquakes, that kind of Iranian bollocks from years ago.
Mm.
And it's not that far behind that. It's as oh look, yes, definitely that we're absolutely convinced that global warming is one of the major factors in the rise of avian flu. And you say, really? Why is that there? Well, it's a bit sort of empty after that. I was one of my favorite cartoons was a guy who was writing on a big transport, like a guy who was writing out the ultimate theorem for the meaning of life. And he just in the middle of halfway down it, he reaches, he's written in this phrase, then a miracle occurs. And the other guy watching it says, I'm a bit worried about you thinking in the middle of that one. Would you like to take me through it? It's just absolutely bonkers. You can't stop. And I have to say that the treatment of Trump, I mean, don't get me wrong, he's not top of my list as someone to have lunch with, but, the treatment of him by the media, I mean, I actually bought the New York Times for the first time in ages.
Did you? Blimey, I haven't been able to buy that for decades.
No, it's just like know your enemy, I guess. And every single page was full of rubbish about Trump, things he'd done, things he hadn't done. I mean, and then somebody wrote me an email saying, you may be behind the music of this one, but Trump just got found guilty. And I wrote back, what did you do? Leave a parking ticket? I mean, it's just
But I mean,
it's just,
it's a foolish strategy because they're going to win the election for him.
Yeah,
because
totally.
I think, this notion that the Hillary Clinton notion that Trump was elected by just the deplorables, rednecks and racists. I mean, if that were true, then you're saying 50% every other American is a redneck racist. And that ignores the fact that when you actually look at who voted for him, there were quite large sections of the upper middle class who voted for him. Quite a lot of minorities voted for him.
I think absolutely. I mean, that's what you can't still get used to is that when he was up against her in 2016, the black minority did not turn up for her.
No,
They stayed at home. You can see it in the numbers. The level of black voting was tiny compared to normal. That's why she lost, but she keeps on calling it, the nasty male glass ceiling. It's rubbish.
Well, it is rubbish. Back then, there was a New York lawyer. She's a classic liberal American, New York lawyer of an ethnicity who you would expect to definitely vote for Hillary. And I asked her about it at the time. She said, "There's no way I can vote for that woman."
No, I mean,
and I said, "Why? I'm really surprised." And she just said, "She's a liar." And
absolutely.
I mean, it's just not the case that I mean, what are they putting up against? Ian and I have laughed about this before. There's 275 million Americans, and the best they can come up with is a fairly thick kumquat and someone in the early stages of dementia. That's it.
I kid you not. I'm still getting complimentary emails from people who said, I had to dash to the lavatory after I read that piece about that, because it was just, because I think it was captured very well. I can't remember exactly when it was you wrote it, but I do remember, that somebody got mixed up and said, was this you or was it him? And I said, no, that was David. Then it was a very, very good encapsulation. I mean, you know what the joke in Hillary's home state is she's known there as Killary, as you may be aware. And they said that it is not, and it was a kind of a joke thing, like, we go to the State Department in America, and they give you, we do not recommend you traveling here on the grounds that, and someone had done an amazing spoof of it, saying, we do not recommend that you go to Hillary's home state, as lone drivers tend to come to a sticky end.
Okay, we all know what that's referencing.
It is, yeah.
Have you ever been banned? I just wondered, because I got shadow banned. Someone who knows that stuff from the inside. Well, it's when they don't outright ban you, but they tweak the algorithm to make sure that you appear on page 87. Yeah. I don't know how exactly that works, but I was told this by someone who knows how that works. Right. I mean, I've only got this person's word for it. And I was outright banned in China. I imagine you must have got banned, John.
Yeah, by almost everybody. In fact, in a world first, in a world first, I got banned by Facebook. How about that? That's like being banned by your great Aunt Lizzie, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's like.
Well, we got a warning. We got a warning on Hyperland that we had contravened their community standards, and I almost choked. I thought, you've got standards?
Wow. Yes, quite. Yeah.
Wow,
yeah.
I hadn't noticed.
Yeah, well, we had the standards, and then we had the first class standards. And then we have what you've just done. So you're down, you're back, you're out. I was paying Gmail a premium to ensure that every single one of my emails went into the main file, because they were all followers of mine, not into the junk file, and they were all going into the junk file anyway. So I'm now working with Chimp, and Chimp mail are okay, but you still catch them out now and again. And the worst of the lot that really gets my goat is Elon Musk all over deodorant, who is he's a piece of work, because he thinks it's funny to change your, every now and again he says, we just want to check you're a human being. That was where I got the first time I got down there. We just want to check that you're a human being. So I wrote back and said, you want to see if I'm a human being? But anyway, that didn't get me very far. And then after that, they kept giving me IQ tests, and the IQ tests got harder and harder and harder. And then eventually, he said, that's fine, you're clear to carry on. And you carry on, and you get to somewhere, it's a dead end. The line's dead. So I am officially now banned by them. But last time I saw it, and I made a comment on, I forget, one of the social media, Gab, I think I remember. Anyway, that got amazing 20 people all saying that's exactly what he's done to me. And it's what he specializes in. Elon Musk thinks it's a real gag to have people wasting their time so he can say, I'm not banned anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been through that process as well.
Yeah. And a piece which he complained about also on, Klaus Schwab, about Well, of course, I said, this is what Klaus does. He's such an unruly little cheeky monkey. He goes off and disappears for 7 weeks. Nobody knows where he is. Nobody calls the cops. And then when he comes back, except we still can't see him, what's happened is that he's taken a step backwards and downwards. So he's not going to be there when he dies. He's handing over to somebody else. But there's another 3 weeks gone by, and still he hasn't appeared in public anywhere. So maybe they're having trouble, like one of those cars, that gets put onto the rubbish pile and they crush it into a tiny little cube. And that basically before he makes any kind of public appearance, they're trying to drag it out again and just make sure that he looks okay. But it's just, and that's interesting to me because I never could fit in my mind where the whole World Economic Foundation, which I think was its latest incarnation, where it looked, where it fitted into the whole thing, because he, as you know, is very keen on this stakeholder capitalism and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, it's actually just glorified. We get all the money and you do all the work, so that's fine. But I mean, I think there is part of him, I suspect, that is kind of like almost naively happy to think that maybe this might be a better way to do it than the way of doing it now. And clearly this is not allowed.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden he disappeared.
I have this general feeling that the very notion of democracy is really under attack from all sides, even from the people who spend all of their time praising it and forcing it on other countries at these, with bullets and bayonets.
Yeah.
Do you share that, or is it just me feeling paranoid?
I don't know. I think I'm at the dark end of that one. To be honest with you, in terms of the USA, let's see what happens in the election. Let's see if the election even takes place. But assuming that it does, you can bet your life that somebody in the CIA is working out ways they can create a national emergency so they don't have to have the election.
Do you really think so? I think Trump is going to win, and then
I think and
then well, it remains to be seen if he's made enough friends in the other parts of the American government that he doesn't meet with a sticky end. I mean, I don't think it's as easy to get rid of someone like Trump as it was when I've always been in the opinion that you look at that time in the 60s and when they got rid of JFK, Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and Malcolm X, all within a short space of time. If that had happened in any other country, you would have called it a coup.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as easy to do that today.
I think democracy is not just on the run. I think in the USA, it's almost completely gone. And if you can't trust the viability of the election results, then it's all over. And also, if you can't trust I mean, what does the judiciary do when it turns out that there's amazingly 3.5 million Americans voted at 4 o'clock in the morning the way you do? And they said, well, we don't want any more of this nonsense. It's too divisive, and we're seriously thinking about making that a criminal offense to question. Well, you listen to that and you think, I don't believe I'm reading this. I mean, it's like it was the sort of thing that, Stalin would have said.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also people have got it fixed in their mind now that questioning the election is something that Trump supporters do. And they've forgotten the whole hanging Chads fiasco when George W. won by a handful of hanging Chads. And it was the Democrats who were questioning the validity of it.
Yeah.
Obviously, they didn't go nearly as far, but it's not something that is restricted to the Republicans. I wouldn't vote Republican. I mean, I wouldn't be able to bring myself to vote Democrat either. But
that's the problem.
Well, that is the problem. I mean, I just feel that the more you hear this overheated rhetoric about, democracy being under attack, the very people who are saying it seem to me to be the people who are doing the most to undermine it.
I think that's, and I find to do it in a way is you have this very clever way of expressing something which they feel is happening, but somehow managing not to say, therefore we must do something about it. They just leave it there for you to think, so that's elected, parliaments and so forth, and free speech, and look, that's one newspaper after another is going down and can't print anything anywhere near the truth. So I would say that free speech for sure, and democracy as an institution is almost gone now in America. I think it went in Canada after Fidel Castro's son finally came out of the closet and became prime minister. I mean, I think, if you've seen the pictures of Castro when he was young, standing next to a picture of Trudeau now, he doesn't look anything like Trudeau Senior. And he certainly looks a lot like.
Right. But I'm also just sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you see in the future that beyond this election, we've seen more countries that have written into their constitution rules and regulations that you can only stand for so long. That in the future somebody like Trump's going to get elected and sort of say, actually, what I need to do is change our constitution. I need to stay in for another 5 years, or 10 years, or 15 years.
Yeah.
To defend the democracy, to defend the people of America.
I think I hope he's got more sense than that, because if he did that, he would be completely and utterly slaughtered by the left-wing press, and most importantly, I think they would say, "Well, we told you so. We told you so." He's another Hitler. The same is true. I think you can say of I remember listening to Tony Benn, in the mid 70s, when we were last having a tizzy about whether we wanted to be in the European Union or not. And it was one of Benn's, most of his politics I didn't like at all, but I think he was absolutely perfectly on the money when he said what the European Union would turn into. And then he said, it'll turn into a rich man's club run by the bureaucrats.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happened.
Yeah.
Well, sadly, yes, it is.
It's a great shame, because it could have been so much more,
Well, it was
so much more.
I mean, during the whole Brexit debate, because I was often asked to be on panels, because up here I was the Green Party candidate, so we would have a panel of one person from each party, and all the things that the pro-European people, which was essentially Labour and the Lib Dems, were saying. I said, well, these are wonderful things. Yeah, they're genuinely great, but they all date from about 2006 or earlier.
Yeah.
And after that, it did start to become what Tony Benn said it would. I mean, you only have to look at, is it Bayer who brought up Monsanto? No, Bayer. Yeah, Bayer bought Monsanto.
Yeah.
And suddenly, EU regulations about that sort of thing. Oh, look, they're being watered down. Oh, look, we're not going to say anything about that anymore.
Yeah. No, and also, did you see the way in which, with moves like that, also were encouraged by the Commission, as they're laughingly called, to ban all forms of alternative or additional treatments that are not within the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah.
And they've now all been banned. But some of them, I believe, well, we used to have, when I was in my second marriage, we used to have 3 dogs. Now, I don't think there's such thing as white coat syndrome with dogs. Basically, they don't sit there and say, always given me one of those pills, so now I'm supposed to feel better. It's just that you can watch it happening. A dog gets overexcited, give him one of these pills, and wallow these away, and it works. So there's clearly something there. I doubt very much if it would work on somebody like a Putin, but at the same time, I think what it means effectively is you are you're just basically again losing the voyage and accepting a massively biased point of view from a hugely commercial organization. And that's what that's what the EU used to be quite good at in the 70s and 80s. And then I think what happened was that NATO kind of like weaved its way in between all the legs of the squid and got into big time. So now that oh no, we're never going to have a European army. Oh, guess what happened last week? Somebody said was going to have a mandatory draft, to fight a guy who is a known drug misuser, who has taken £2 billion out of the American state and nobody knows where it is. I mean, it's just how can you take him seriously? I can't. But I hear all these people all and again saying, he's that swine Putin. You talk to Russians who have been in Russia, or even my next door neighbor, funny enough, was Ukrainian, and she once said to me, I think all that Putin would like is for Ukraine to just go away because it's a problem he doesn't need, And the idea of, oh, he's a madman, look, he's insane, he's a butcher. And you think, no, as far as I can see. I mean, let's face it, okay, he's not a model of a libertarian democracy.
Certainly
but I think he's inherited a bit of a mess, and he's done the best he can to defend his own people. And I don't think that makes him a hero. I think it just makes him want to survive, and along with them. But there's things that we get to in the end of it. The big problem I find in dealing with this one as a whole, as a sort of a great big canvas, almost like if you like a Bacon triptych, like you're looking at it and you see it, you think, wow, this is amazing. But what you're looking at the outset is the arrival of a feeling that it's no good rearranging the deck chairs anymore on this one.
No,
we need a complete blow it all out and start again.
Yeah.
And my whole life has been against that kind of thing, because my politics degree always taught me meet the new boss, same as the old boss. I always felt that would always happen. And just one ideology would replace another ideology, and it would be just as bad as it was before. Now, I'm no longer convinced of that, because I just think whatever happens, how on earth can it be any worse than it is now?
Yeah, well, see, that's interesting, because, I always used to think of us as probably starting out from quite different politics, but converging on on being deeply dissatisfied and deeply disappointed with the status quo. And that was the amazing thing about that whole financial crash moment, is people of extremely different political persuasions made common cause, because they said, all right, we've got very different ideas about what kind of politics we think might be the answer, but we agree on two things. One, that this present system is absolutely corrupt, and two, we ought to be in a system where we can argue about what the future should be like.
Yeah. Well,
I look at I don't know what you think. It's sort of a last question, really, but I look at the English, upcoming election, and I was just talking yesterday to some long-time Labour supporters, not just supporters, but proper Labour people who who worked in all of the things which Labour supports, and were out there on the streets. They weren't just a Labour voter; they were a Labour activist for decades. And I asked them about the debate which had happened, both between the two leaders and the subsequent one. And astonishingly, they said, "Well, we thought Farage won it."
Yeah.
And they were appalled. But we talked about it, and we sort of came round to the problem is that we now have a one-party system. We don't have a two-party system. We have a one-party system which has two parts to it. There's the Tory part, which gets things done, and then the Labour Party, which has to be elected occasionally to lower the pressure so that the Tory party can get back in. Yeah. And these long-time Labour people ruefully started to think, well, it was sort of saying, I mean, and I just feel like get the Tories out to get Tory light in so that you can get the Tories back in. And are we at the place where maybe, is there any chance of finally sweeping away the whole moribund, worm-eaten edifice of our present political system? I hope so, because otherwise we're just, as you said, we've got two teams of people arguing about should the deck chairs be in rows or should they be in a circle?
Yeah, I think
why are we head for a massive iceberg?
No, that's right. That's right. It's to be honest, myself at this moment, I can't see how anything other than pretty radical action is. First of all, let's put it like this. So we're saying the same thing in just slightly different ways, I think. I believe we do not have an opposition party in this country. They're just two twins, the same exactly. I believe
Tweedledum.
That's it. And here comes the next one. He's probably Tweedledummer, because that's also Farage, who I like as a guy. I think he's right. We have had quite a few arguments over the years, but he's genuine. I mean, you're in no doubt about what he wants. He wants to get the hell out of Europe and have nothing to do with it. And yet, you see, he comes from that city boy, Brill Cream era, of bourse politics and all the rest of it. And he doesn't think that he doesn't want to change that. Well, I would change all of it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work at all. It does. I mean, it was the bosses originally, the original ones in Holland were originally formed to raise money for, real entrepreneur capitalists of a slightly, this being Holland, of a slightly mutualist bent. Now, that's pretty much where my politics lie. But we're not going to get that. It's the old turkeys don't vote for Christmas thing. I mean, something is going to happen at a pretty drastic place. I mean, I try to deflect the question a lot at the moment because I don't think I've really nailed yet what needs to be done. But I see a lot of people and they say, well, what do you, when you see this stuff, what do you think is going to make a difference? And I said, well, where do you want to start? And by the way, you won't be starting yesterday. You'll be starting 20 years ago when it became impossible to even give an answer in an examination that stood up. Because if you don't toe the line, you're stupid. So you get the feeling all the time of being pushed around. And if there's one thing guaranteed to make me exceedingly upset is to push me around. That's
where you and I are similar. I don't like being told that I must think that, and if I don't think this, then the person leaps to the conclusion that well, you must support them, as if I feel like always I'm being forced to accept their duality. Either you think this or you must think that, and I think. No, both answers are absolutely crap. Biden is crap, and Trump is crap. Brexit was crap. Europe was crap. The entire entire thing. I don't want to be forced into their outworn and not working dichotomies.
That's right.
And I really do resent it when you try to step outside it. there's this other term which is then brought in. If you're neither with us or against us, then you're just a peddler of disinformation. And those are the three options you've got in the world.
Yeah.
Which kind of like, in 1939, somebody going into Poland and say, so who would you rather be invaded by, the USSR or the Nazis? It's crazy. I mean, I think there's it's that feeling of being hemmed in that gets to me. I mean, I had it a little bit when I was at school, but by the time I got to university, I think, it was very much, if you want to get an okay degree, then fine, just toe the line, don't say anything too on that. But, a lot of the lecturers then, including Ridley's brother and so forth, they said, no, write what you think, but so long as you can back it up. Because if you can back it up, and it's another solution. We are supposed to be in search of solutions, not more questions. And I think that I've always been a great fan of learning from the past. It's like Stalin said, he who controls the past controls the future. Yeah. By which he meant, in the standards of his day, he could quickly build a generation over 30 years of people who hadn't the faintest idea whether what happened in 1917 to the Russian royal family was real or not real. He could just say,
we're back there again now.
Yes, we are.
And we have people who have taken it upon themselves to save us all from being infected by bad ideas. Yeah. They're treating us all like sort of mentally challenged children.
Yeah.
This must be deplatformed, and that must not be spoken about, and that must be banned. And you think, I'm a grown-up. Yes. I can hear anything I want, and I will be able to hold whatever it is at arm's length, look at it for myself, question it for myself, and make up my own mind. I don't need you, whoever you do-gooders are, to save me.
Yeah. Well, as an exemplar of that, I think the reason I finally decided that Hillary Clinton has just completely lost it, completely, was when she actually went on to a pretty big talk show in America. I can't remember which one it was, after the result in 2016. And now she started saying, well, of course, once Trump is defeated, we then need to get a hold of the people who voted for him and re-educate.
Yes, I remember that too.
And you think, what is she on?
But the thing is, it's happening.
It is. And it's happening.
We had the Nudge unit under Cameron. We've got the Global Disinformation Index, a UK company, which is paid, I think, somewhat like over 2 million it's paid by the UK government, the US government, the German government, the EU, and it bans things from the internet. It just kills them.
Well,
and
then you've got all this staying up.
I don't think there's a way we're going to solve this one today, guys.
No, but I'll tell you what, I'm not going to be re-educated, not by anyone.
No. Well, that's what I feel. I feel that I'm very happy to notice that conditions have changed, but that does not mean I'm going to comply. It just means that I can see now it's harder than ever, or I can see possibly this is an opportunity when it's easier than ever. But I'm increasingly saying to people, don't take sides, because there's no point. They're both the same. Don't take sides. Take action.
Yes, exactly.
Do something that makes them scared.
Yes,
they're not
what
scared
you've been doing.
of us. Yeah.
And I'm not going to be re-educated by the right or the progressive. A plague on both of their houses.
Yeah, right.
I was going to sort of say, David, you need to learn to talk with a smile on your face. Visit Gambia.
It's the only way. I did find, I have to say, with advertising clients in the 80s, I did find that the best way, if you were in the wrong and the campaign had screwed up or whatever, or it wasn't working on the turbulence, was to walk in with a smile on your face and say, we screwed up. We got it wrong. I'm sorry. If you want to fire us, this is your right. This is your right and duty. However, I do have this script in my pocket. Take that one. It was. But what I wouldn't do, is, get myself into a maelstrom of lies, because it's very quick.
Yeah.
By the time you reach the stage where you forget what lies you've told.
Yeah.
And the first rule, is as an advertising business, it has pretty, a bad name, but it still doesn't stop people from having a very good sense of humor and being very glad when certain advertising fails, because they think it's absolutely unacceptable. I mean, one of my favorite stories was some guys. I said, "Who's doing the translation for this Chinese poster campaign?" And they said, "Oh, some local guy is doing actually." And he was supposed to say, "Kentucky Fried Chicken." And it's been, Kentucky Fried Chicken is historic or something equally banal as that. And the Chinese translator wrote, "And meet your ancestors with Kentucky Fried Chicken." And I looked at it and I said to the account man, "It's kind of lost something in the translation, but but it's amazing how many people I still know it does, who just say, if only we could write an advertising campaign which would persuade people to just think for a bit, and about what they, and of course, you meet as many people as well are pretty nasty about the business. It taught me a lot, put it like that. It taught me a lot about how to persuade, and it taught me a lot about how not to persuade, because there's no need to tell people anything but the truth.
Yeah.
If the people are telling it wrong, then they're telling it wrong. And, it's kind of like you can't lose if you're telling the truth. There was a great campaign once for a Nescafe. And it was a great campaign, but it was on the wrong product. Because it was trying to say that it was so good, it almost felt like he'd done it in the percolator. And it didn't. It wasn't. And I said to the client, "This is an overclaim.
Yeah.
You're just going to look a silly arse by the time we finished it." And it turned out that way.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
well, I do think we need to carry on trying to tell people the truth and not get blocked from doing it.
Precisely. I mean, I always thought it was when the Advertising Standards Authority finally got round to producing some proper limits on what you could and couldn't say without all the, nancying around. There was an amazing moment when I said, "So, what about party political broadcasts?" "Well, that's not advertising." "Yes, it is."
Yes, it is.
But it is. We don't want less people to vote for us because of what we said in the do we? No, but it's not advertising. Why is that? Because there's no product. But there is a product.
There is a product, yeah.
And so it went on like that. But it's typical of the political class. Generally, they cannot see how obviously they protect themselves, and it's still hugely resented by the vast majority of people you meet who've got a functioning brain. You say, Isn't it funny how they always look after themselves first? And of course, it's always been so.
And this will be their downfall in the end, I think. But
yeah, probably. Anyway, last one on the barricades of Sicily. That's what I said.
Listen, John, it's been great talking to you.
Yeah, I was going to say, love you to come back on, mate. I don't think we've touched on half of it.
No, we probably didn't. I mean, for instance, I didn't mention continuing the strange past and now future of Mr. Schwab. I didn't get very far on why I'm fairly convinced that I think it was actually the so-called New World Order that took him to one side and said, "Listen, you're giving people hope here. That's not the idea. Shut up." And because I'm sure that's what happened. Because I think the whole strategy is it's all a mess. And the more mess we make of it, the more they'll want what we've got to sell.
Yeah, that could be.
Yeah.
Well, listen, come back and talk to us again. We'll see if we can annoy the powers that be a little bit more. Maybe even make them afraid. That would be good.
Yes, please.
Thanks very much, John.
Take care. Nice to meet you, Ian, by the way. Nice to meet you both.
Cheers, guys.
Okay. Ciao.
Bye for now. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed that,
we'd be grateful if you could subscribe to Hyperland on Substack, YouTube,
and leave us comments. We'd love to know what you thought, what you agreed with, what you disagreed with.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much.